while this island may not be Sicily, it is in fact the island of Capri in the southern Italian region, a little bit north of the island of Sicily in the central Mediterranean. It nonetheless serves as an example of what kind of landscape and area the Romans and the Carthaginians would have with regards to their fighting in the Punic Wars, which I'm about to explain right now. The Punic Wars were a series of conflicts that took place primarily to dominate the island of Sicily between many different warring powers, but really the historical legacy of the wars was more so the beginning of the expansion of Rome from merely a concentrated republic on the Italian peninsula to an extensive empire that would conquer throughout Europe and northern Africa, as well as lay the foundation for the entire continent of Europe to be one of the leading global and geopolitical powers. The war officially began in around the 250s BCE, and while exact historical records and dates are unknown due to the war being so ancient, the main cause was the fact that the Empire of Carthage, or also known as the Carthaginian Empire, which was located in the Tunisia, Libya, and northern Africa area, decided they wanted to have a piece of the island of Sicily, which at the time the Roman Empire and the Carthaginian Empire were attempting to conquer. Now, the Carthaginian Empire, or Carthage, was ruled by General Hannibal Barca, who was known for his strong strategy, mental acuity, and intense military resources, which enabled him to engage in such a political conquest overseas. And of course, the Romans need no introduction with regards to their military and infrastructural technology and innovation. Now, the war eventually began with the rise of the Carthaginians and their ability to expand into Sicily, and their major military victories, which over the course of 10 years of the war, up into the 240s BCE, resulted in Carthage being able to take the southern portion of the island and much of the resource-filled centers, until the war had a turning point when the Romans fully invested in fighting their Carthaginian foes and were able to win what is called the First Punic Wars, which took place throughout much of the middle of the 200s BCE. What's more important with the course of the conflicts is what is known as the Second Punic War. And this war led to the rise of one of the most famous figures in world history, although a man who is not fully known for his accomplishments, Hannibal Barca, or simply put, Hannibal. Basically, he wanted to avenge the loss of his father and the fall of the major expanse of the Carthaginian Empire that preceded him. And so he did a similar strategy and declared war on the Romans and tried to reconquer Sicily. However, he used a variety of purely Carthaginian technologies and military strategies that the Romans had never been exposed to, including using elephants as major military, you could say, tanks or methods of expansion, throwing snakes on Roman ships, and using small undersea batters or batons to destroy Roman triremes, or these kind of long singular ships that the enemy had, and many more examples of very diverse, perhaps even unique ways to wage war. Ultimately, Hannibal actually won several victories to the point where he not only took over the entire island of Sicily, but was beginning to penetrate into the mainland of Rome, until the Roman Republic appointed a general by the name of Scipio Africanus, who went towards the island of Sicily and was able to meet the match of Hannibal. Basically was able to be his superior militarily and was able to push the Carthaginians out of the island and actually push the Romans into Carthage. As a result, Hannibal ended up going into exile into what's now known as Gebze, Turkey, or Anatolia, as it was known back then, and eventually died there as Scipio and his troops were in pursuit of him. Now, finally, the Third Punic Wars, which took place in the 100s BCE, were not really much of a, you could say, extensive conflict between Carthage and Rome, and was more just Rome's excuse to completely demolish the Carthaginian Empire to assure that they never had the same strength they used to. And this war was spearheaded by Roman Senator Cato the Elder, and as I just described, resulted in the complete fall of Carthage. The Romans penetrated through Carthage, or what's now known as Tunis, within Tunisia, and destroyed the empire completely, burning it to the ground. And to this day, there are still not as many remnants as other ancient empires of Carthage due to the utter destruction of this war. Overall, this war ultimately led to Rome now realizing it could spread beyond the Italian borders, and over the next 100 years, it would massively do this, entering what's now known as France, or back then referred to as Gallia or Gaul, entering the Spain and Iberian Peninsula region, entering modern Yugoslavia and the Balkans, and other examples of massive Roman conquest that would begin as a result of the historical legacy of this war.